do. I just wanted to show my creature comforts for a little bit. Remember, I bought these at Universal. Put them somewhere. I'll put them in the back, but you're not going to really see them. But they'll be here. I needed something to kind of brighten the scene. I don't want it just to be a bland, boring background because you're used to seeing all that, right? Anyway, so funerals. Uh, Funerals are tough. Now, my mom texted me, I think, on the night of the 4th of July. What a fucking holiday that is. Fuck the 4th of July. Unless you're in a nice area. I mean, white people, whether you're German white, you're Polish white, you're Irish white, you're French white, you're Swedish white, British white, doesn't matter what white you are. If your name is Johnson or dare I say Kowalski, I think Kowalski's Irish, but it doesn't matter. If you're an American white dude and you live in a nice area, you can't seem to figure out why I'm saying fuck the 4th of July. It's like there's fireworks and people bombing with M80s out there. You tell me. You all left East LA. You blockbusted your homes. As soon as we moved in, the gentrification stopped. Okay. So on the night of the 4th of July, my mom texted me and said there's going to be a wake and a funeral. Now, as heartless as it's going to sound, the funeral is like the Home Alone 2 to Home Alone. If you saw Home Alone, you don't need to see Home Alone 2. Or if you saw Home Alone 2, you don't need to see Home Alone, right? To me, the wake, you get to see the person who died. You say a prayer, you say some things, and you move on. I mean, that's the way it should be, right? It shouldn't be that you have to really be there longer. There are going to be family members I have not seen in decades. Okay? I actually, you know what I did? Most people don't. Some people don't do this. Some YouTubers do not do this. I went back and watched my MGTOW. I'm just a man going my own way. I'm not really MGTOW anymore, but I'm a man going my own way, if that makes sense. I went back and watched the MGTOW videos of me. What is it? You know, that thumbnail where I'm like this, where it's like grounds for dismissal, and then the update where I'm showing my. It's over. It's still over there, isn't it? See, I transferred. I did the Optimus Prime, all that stuff. So, yeah. So I did those two videos. I watched them again, and I said, yeah, I went out some rails. I was very anti-woke, I think, but outside of that, I was really going on about a lot of the things I said before. I'm not wrong about. It's very difficult to get along with my family. This family has fallen apart. It's dead. So I want to talk about, got me 3 minutes to this point. I want to talk about the funerals that had happened before. Since 1987, my brother's death, there have been like 7, maybe 8 people who have died. Now, my brother Adrian, Sebastian's twin brother. I had 2 brothers, okay? Sebastian and Adrian. Adrian's funeral was in 76. I believe, actually 77, because of, no, actually, November of 80, I'm sorry. I'm getting people and years mixed up. Everything has happened in 45 years or so. But this was 47 years ago. And so he died, Adrian died in November of 76, and he was buried. I never saw my grandparents except for my grandmother and my dad's mom. When I was 2 years old, my mom's mom died, and I don't remember the funeral for that. I know that she was a difficult person, and she wanted my mom to live a life being in a restaurant. Even when my mom turned 18, she wanted my mom to stay in that restaurant and do what she was told her, one of these, right? However it was. And that was hard. Even my dad acknowledged that. Then my great-grandmother died. I said she was in her 70s. That's not true. I think she might have been in her 90s because my grandmother had to have been a lot younger because my grandmother died at age 82 in 1999. And so her mom had to have been older. So I think she was in her early 90s, probably when she died on that ironing. My sister found her keeled over on an ironing board. And we had the funeral for that. I don't remember much at all, if I was even there. So then we get to my brother's death, Sebastian. Okay, Sebastian was born blind. I've said this before. And I remember I have said this before, my mom saying, if God was good, why did he allow my son to die? Why does God allow sick children to die in hospitals? March 11th, September 11th, innocent people. Uvalde, Texas, right? Sandy Hook. People being executed for centuries. Witchcraft, sacrifice to the gods, blasphemy to the king. Well, Copernicus was going to get executed if he didn't say that the earth was at the center of the solar system. That's how we were. We were barbaric at times. And God was barbaric. And if I ever die sooner than later, God and I are going to have words. Why did you allow my brother to die? Why not me? So when my brother died, and this is probably the most serious funeral, that's the first funeral I can remember. My mom threw herself on that casket. I mean, was racking, sobbing. It was hard. She really, it was the one funeral where everybody remembered. Everyone. My brother died of AIDS not because my dad had AIDS or my mom had AIDS. Hemophilia was a bitch. And the recombinant that we used to get, the anti-hemophilia recombinant factor for factor VIII, was made with human blood. And if it's human blood, if it's the same blood type, or if it's compatible, okay, no problem. Oh, what are those weird things? Oh, that doesn't matter. Well, we'll take it. My parents sued the fuck out of those people, the pharmaceutical company, for, I think, at least 1,000. So they got their compensation, but it wasn't enough to bring my brother back. So my brother died because of poor business decisions. I had hepatitis C for, I'll say, like 36 years. I had hepatitis C for 36 years because of poor business decisions. Fuck these if these pharmaceutical companies fuck up the cure for hemophilia, fuck them too. They better get it right. A lot of people had sacrificed a lot of their freedom to do case studies to get that cure made and get it done right. And they better not be overcharging. There's only 16,000 hemophiliacs left. But when my brother's funeral happened, it was hard. It was hard. I mean, my sisters cried. It was an unneeded death. And there was a time we all sat quiet. We were quiet at the funeral. And then everybody just started talking peacefully. I think my sister said something, and then, they said, well, this is normal for people to talk to each other after a death. And, okay, that was a really hard one. We go forward, and it's my cousin Gabriel. But I was not invited to that funeral. I was not allowed to go, or I just wasn't there, or they didn't want me there. And my cousin Gabriel was a piece of shit. We liked video games, and we liked, he would always want my stuff, or he would always. But my mom told me that my uncle, his dad wanted to tie him to a bed because he had hemophilia. He was ashamed of him. And yet my aunt stuck through. We'll get to Pablo in a minute, but she stuck through with him through thick and thin, even though he was a piece of shit. And then his son was a piece of shit. And then I think Memo too. Memo's still alive. So I was not invited to that funeral, unfortunately. My mom did say that there were gangbangers, or people who looked like gangbangers, at that funeral. I don't know. Then we get to 1999, which was my dad's mom's funeral. This woman had lung cancer. She was not a nice person. She cheated on my grandpa. She had parties. Well, now that she had divorced him, I don't know if she had affairs, but she had an affair with one man who left her for a underage girl in Sinaloa, Mexico. Okay, and she had parties with all kinds of men, living it up, having fun with all kinds of. It was like one of those parties where, pick a song, Los Razos or Los Tigres del Norte, and all kinds of weird men would be at her house, and she'd have a fun time. Okay, well, don't know what to tell you. It was her life, but I think that my mom once said that she was watching my sisters, and if any of those men that were at that party, if they were there and they did something to them, and my dad knew about it, oh, he would have killed her faster. So she had lung cancer. She got frail. She had bad bowel movements. She had to wear a diaper. My dad was angry. We had awkward dinners. She was the kind of person that would go like the loud. Remember the loud talk I would say way back when, and she'd go, "Oh, how you doing, mijo? Oh, okay. Oh yeah, with this thing that's happening. Oh yeah, you see that thing that's happening? Okay." It it was weird. There was no level of you figure if you could. Okay, here's how you have a good family. Okay, maybe it's true for comedians like Kate Quigley or um, Lee Syatt or whoever. But if you can smoke weed and laugh at all the jokes in Conker's Bad Fur Day, then that's a great family because you could just sit there and just laugh about stuff. It's great. Um, but nothing like that. It was just very, very informal. And when she died, I remember we went to the wake. Cousin Danny came. Oh, how you doing, mijo? Hey, how you doing? Oh yeah. I'm so sorry your grandmother died. I'm a relative of your grandmother's. This is my mother. My mom would. Well, no, no, not my mom. His mom was 91 at the time. She died a few years later, and she just walked like this. She had a kind of stiff hand, walk like this, and then cousin Danny had kind of his arms were misshapen, and he was just kind of walking. Oh, how you doing, mijo? It's good to see you. Oh shit! And there were all kinds of relatives that we haven't heard of, like Avundio, Abundio. Yes, we had Mojado names like Ilafio and Avundio and Avilardo and Chuy and Quao and Chato. And so we had Avundio was another relative that used to date my mom after she found out that, or not my mom, my grandmother, after she found out her husband, my grandfather, had affairs. So distant relatives. The funeral for my grandmother, I distinctly remember John. John, who was my nephew, is no longer my nephew by law. He came in with these sort of like Scott Summers, like X-Men style, like dark shades. Like he was trying to look cool for the funeral. And I'm like, what is that? Like, what is that? Like, I know he had to wear. I know he had to wear glasses. He had like, I think he was nearsighted, and he had to like wear prescription glasses. But then he had these shades on for the funeral. I'm like, you know, yeah. It's like you're trying to look stylish for the funeral. It's like it's my grandmother's funeral. It's just there's nothing to this. You're not going to see college students your age hanging out. We're all having a nice time chat. That's not what this is. It would make sense, but like it's a bunch of old people, and we're putting my grandmother to rest. So she had my grandmother Amelia. She had pet dogs. She had lung cancer. She didn't take good care of herself. She didn't exercise, and she ended up rotting away. And nurses took care of her until she died. I remember seeing her just at rest, and it's a bit awkward. Um, yeah, she was a foolish person. The next person who died 3 years later was my dad. That was, I mean, I thought the more I thought about that recently, that was really strange that my dad died 3 years later. He was born in 1944. My grandmother, I think, was born. Let me get this right. 1917. 1917. So she was 27 when she had my dad. She was 27. Not very. I mean, I guess that'd be old people years in 1940s, but 27 years old. Now you think about it, it's like most YouTubers or Twitch streamers starting out are 27. Hopefully they don't have kids. Or Kickstarter. Well, Kick streamers. You know, I would say Kickstarter. We still have Kickstarter, I think, right? Or is that gone? I don't even know what's going on. We have Kick, we have Rumble, we have all these things. Um, so she died, and then my dad died 3 years later. He was 58. Joey Diaz. I try to think of what my dad would look like, and I try to think what did my dad look like? Somewhere between um, Jackie Gleason and Joey Diaz, but with glasses and a kind of a beard, okay, facial hair, right? And Joey Diaz kind of looks like my dad, the way he used to look, just like this old fat dude. And Joey Diaz is now in his 60s. My dad never made it to that point. My neighbor's in his 60s, and he's kind of an old fart. You know, he kind of walks a little stiff, but and I thought about somebody I used to know in college. His dad, a very attractive man. He had no hair, bald, and when he came, he was like looked like he was exercising. Oh, I know Mijo. You're Ben was his name. You're Ben's friend. Oh, cool. Nice to meet you. And he kind of stood like this. I was like, why didn't my dad stand like this? Like very heroic, like Superman almost. Like right. He just stood very attractive. I mean, God, that couple must be doing it all the time, right? Even their old age. And I think Ben's dad from college was in his 50s. Was in his 50s, and he looked great. My dad was out of shape. The problem with my dad was that he had drank too much, he had smoked too much, he had pancreatic cancer. He worked in an aeronautics space engine, like space age engines facility where it's like Homer Simpson. Right. That's all he did. Like he just did, and he was unhealthy. He didn't exercise. He was quick to give you a good one, but he didn't exercise. I remember the last time we went hiking, he couldn't make it past 100 feet. And the funeral, we had the wake. I don't remember much about the funeral itself, but we had the wake. And going back to my grandmother's funeral, cousin Danny and his mother, they wanted to stay at my grandmother's house where she died, and my dad was like, nope. And she took that personally, and the mother didn't show up at my grandmother's funeral. She was like, only cousin Danny showed up. I don't know if cousin Danny was at my dad's funeral. Maybe I think he probably did, but I had a girlfriend at the time. I think Casey's the one that ran around with her cousin. You know what I mean? And so she was there with me, introduce each other to, oh, this is Casey, these are my sisters. And I remember we fooled around a bit after my dad's wake or funeral. It was hard to see my dad at rest. It was a very different thing than I thought my dad would live forever and give me shit forever, you know. But then I thought about a couple of years before he died, I thought about the story of Little Richard, how Little Richard's dad hated. I think it was just the dramatization. Maybe it wasn't as bad, but who knows? Like he would just be like Little Richard's dad would be like Adam, and then later on in the dramatization, in the sort of the biopic, it's a TV movie. Okay, you see young Little Richard in his 30s or 40s saying, "Hey mom, there's the house, mom. There's the house for you, mom." So I thought about that Little Richard movie, how the dad was always a piece of shit and always mad at him, and then he died, and then a few years later, my dad died. So it's like it was just I had thought about that movie often. So the funeral was, my sister would say something, but I remember when my dad died, everybody was grabbing all of his belongings, all of his precious stuff, whatever he had. They were just, the vultures were waiting. The vultures just pounced. So I was. There was another relative whose funeral I was not invited to. It was a distant relative. Um, I was not invited to my sister Marlo's funeral, even though I think her husband had burned the body. They said the body was horribly shot in the face, but it's like, it's just suspicious anyway. And my sister would want me to go make a comic book about how how shitty her husband was, and that she had like she was brutally murdered, and let's make it like it was just awkward. Like I don't think she did not. I think my sister wanted to die, and I think her husband was like completely complicit about it. It's like, you know, police officers' wives do not die. How did this happen, my man? How did this happen? So I did not get invited to my sister's funeral or wake. Um, Stasha, remember I told you about the 2005 wedding style family Thanksgiving? I was supposed to see Stasha, my aunt's first child, that nobody knew about until it was too late. But I think I said this before. We knew about Stasha. We would not be allowed to say anything. If we had told you, you tell your mom, oh, I don't know what you're talking about. And then Auntie would come at us real bad. So we said nothing. No, it doesn't matter. It doesn't fucking matter. But yeah, Stasha died. She was dying of an illness. I think it might have been cancer, but she was dying. And so she wanted to see her mom, my aunt, my mom's sister, before she died. A lot of things have happened. I did not go to Stasha's funeral. I did not even meet her. I was sorry I did not meet her. I'm trying to think of anybody else that between that and that. If I listed everybody in between that time. Um, Pablo. Pablo died of a heart attack, did not go to his funeral. Don't know what happened there. I think nobody wanted to be there. If my family went there, why would you go there? Yeah. So now we get to my cousin Elba's funeral, which is tomorrow. I'm only going to the wake. I'm not going to the funeral. I don't see the point in going to the funeral if you're going to. You gotta look. Here's the thing. Even if I mean, if it's somebody distant, don't even be an opportunist and show. Don't be one of those people that shows up at somebody's funeral. Should you need a favor, I'm sorry, like I'm looking, oh, I'm sorry for your loss, Mijo. Should you need a favor, these people that don't see it's like Bernie Mac said, at a funeral, you got all kinds of people showing up. They're people that don't give a shit, and they're just kind of there for the opportunity, okay? It's better when you see somebody when you can see them. Even if nothing comes out of it, you can live with the fact that you try. If you can try to change their mind or change their perspective, you can't tell people what to do. But maybe if you can spend that one time with them to see if something good can come out of something, or if somebody comes at you differently and says, things are different for me, this is what's changed, maybe, okay? But if they're up to their old tricks, at least you can live with the fact that you tried to meet them halfway. When my dad said, meet me halfway, it was bullshit. It was like, do things my way. You don't need to do that. Really do it halfway where you two come together, even if it's not all the time. Maybe it's more than half the time, right? I tried with my cousin Elba. It doesn't work. I'll go more into this. I'm going to do a video. I was going to do a video for Saturday morning stuff, but I'm just really anxious and depressed and agitated, agile and agitated, and just on my toes, on family watch, just kind of watching everything. So I'm not angry, but I am on high alert because I just don't know. I'm going to be seeing people I have not. There definitely should be people there. If they're not, if I said Ephraim was her husband's name. If I don't know if we're going to see both husbands. I remember seeing her first husband once for my cousin's birthday, Gabriel. But if Joshua, her son, does not show up at this funeral, what's going on? The fact that her son was not there at that Thanksgiving dinner, that bothered me. A lot of things bother me. But all these funerals, there are these opportunists that show up. And it's like Bernie Mac said, people show up, and they're there, but they don't really want to be there. They're there to go through the motions, but they shouldn't be there. It should be the people that really. Here's the thing. I mean, it's like this, okay? If if you had some relation with your family member, the reason I'm doing this is to do my bit. Okay. I did my bit really when I was over there 5 years ago at my aunt's house, but now she's gone. And there was nothing I could say that was going to make things different. Elba was not going to change. So, um, so she's not going to change her ways. I don't feel horrible about this. Now, it could have been COVID-19. It could have been an unforeseeable thing that cancer was. But if she did this to herself, I don't know what to tell you. I don't. We have to take better care. I mean, as Fran Drescher said, your coach is your friend, your partner. I would say like yeah, he's like more like your doctor. Your doctor is your coach. Your friend. He is not your parent. He is somebody that's there to help you, and you listen to your doctor. She told me, Elda told me the cancer was in remission, and now you're gone. What happened? Could have been COVID. If it wasn't COVID, why did you do this? So I don't know. There are so many. I mean, maybe somebody who's had more than one family member die of cancer can tell me, or who works in a cancer center. But I have to think that she let herself go like this, the way that this family is. So I don't want to think about that right now. Um, but I'm doing my bit because I saw her recently, and she was over. She was even over my house in 2019 to put together a toilet because we had to put a new toilet into my bathroom. I didn't. I had nothing to say. My mom invited me today for I'm gonna be just sitting there. That's me while they're talking. Oh yeah, when my dad died, we went over to my sister's house, my oldest sister that tried to play up to my parents, and Casey and I were there, right? And it was a house that we used to. I go through there, and I go through that neighborhood now to bring my groceries home. But my sister used to live on that neighborhood before she moved, like miles up north in California. And everybody, the clucking between the women in this family was like, it was like we looked at each other. That's a lot of talking, too much talking. Where everybody was talking, there was like these woman to woman, like 4, 5, 10 people, all talking in the same room, and I'm like, well, this just looks weird. This looks bizarre. This is what killed my dad. Anyway, if you're a dad, hug your children, please. Give your children a hug. Don't be creepy about it, but just give them a hug every once in a while, especially if you're not home all the time. Just I'm looking at my surroundings. Anyway, wish me luck. I said to myself, and Tom Leykis, I don't listen to him much anymore because he's got his own thing going on. It's hard to go to a funeral where everybody's wearing black and people are you're either seeing a dead body filled with chemicals that they can look like shit, or you're seeing them being lowered into the ground. All I can say is that it's unnatural and it's kind of horrific. It's just I picked the wake because I can at least see her face. It's going to be uncomfortable, but that's part of if, I wish it were simple. You didn't have to deal. It's dealing with the other family members it's going to piss me off more. Okay, going to see that's hard enough. If it was just simple as everybody make an appointment, you sign in a sign-in sheet. Okay, what time are you going to go and see her? You can see her for a few minutes, like you're going to a hospital visit. You just make a prayer. You say your Hail Marys or whatever you would want for her soul to be, and that's it. And you leave. You don't talk to anybody else. That's the way I would want it. But we have to have this formal thing going on. To me, the funeral is the wake outside, but we don't see the body. And everybody's out there outside, and it's uncomfortable. And it's another disaster for me. There are too many young people that have died. Some that are their time had come, but my cousin was too young to die, in my honest opinion. Now, whether she did this herself or not, I may never know the answer. But treat yourself for cancer. Get yourself I have to be tested for colon cancer in 5 years. And that's it. So if you like this video, you know what to do. If you didn't like it, but maybe you got something out of it, you also know what to do. I will give an update tomorrow. I think I've come a long way from 2018 and before that, and I think that I can do even better. Let's see what better is.